Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. We have been going through this book as written by Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Alatas. It's among the monograph that we find in chapter 3 is Islam and the Philosophy of Science. And we have recorded some of our talks here, discussion. So please inform us if you need to have access to them. It's on the YouTube, but of course it's not well publicized. So that's good in a way of keeping privacy, except for those who want to have access to it. So we are now on what page, Atika?
117, I believe.
117. Okay, so I think we have to read from this paragraph here.
Okay.
All right. I don't know why you can't see. There's this thing appearing here. I don't know why. All right, it's good now.
So we're going to start from since. Ustazah, may I just suggest that we kind of came to a consensus to rotate so we can hear and listen to our participants' voices too. Would that be okay with you? So we'll invite after myself, we'll invite Sister Nani and then Sister Ashikin. Is that okay? If you cannot, just leave your comment in the chat box or share out loud and we take note of it.
Sure. Everyone will participate to make it more lively.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start.
Yeah, go ahead, Atika.
Alright, so since it is man that perceives and conceives the world of objects and events external to him, the study of nature includes man himself. But the study of man, of mind, and of the self is also restricted to the methods of new sciences such as psychology, biology, and anthropology, which regard man only as a further development of the animal species and which are none other than methodological extensions of the restriction of reasons and experience to the level of physical reality. Moreover, in order to verify hypotheses and theory science, according to them, requires correspondence with observable fact. And yet, since hypotheses and theories that contradict one another can correspond with observable fact, and since the preference of one as against the other of them is not dictated by any criterion of objective truth, because the truth itself is made to conform with fact. Such preference is then dictated simply by subjective and arbitrary considerations dependent upon convention. This dependence upon convention has created the tendency to regard society rather than the individual man as ultimate, real, and authoritative. Conventionalism reduces all institutional forms as creations of the so-called collective mind of society. Knowledge itself and even human language are nothing but expressions and instruments of the collective mind of this unspeakable God called society.
Oh, thank you, Atika. So at this point, we have been doing this for some time. So all three of you are familiar with his writing, either through our forum that we've been having or maybe from other discussion elsewhere. So let's just hear what you think about this paragraph. I mean, you can just jump in. Well, if I put all your pictures, then you can't see the words. So yeah, do you have any comments on this? What you want to say?
Yeah. From my point of view, I mean, from psychology standpoint, peer pressure, society pressure is all real.
Pressure from society? What do you mean by that?
Pressure from society, conforming to society. I mean, we take their views so heavily that it will affect our decision on how we behave towards God, how we behave towards others. We've seen, I mean, I've seen many, like how they do macam experiments, social experiment um, in the streets where someone maybe needs help, but because nobody is helping that person, everybody will, all the bystanders see the person but nobody's helping, then kita pun macam okay, we don't help them because nobody's doing it. If I were to do it, or if I were to first do it, then people will look weird on me. How our behavior are very much affected by what people think.
I think
And
you're venturing
society.
into ethics there, but yeah, it's very much
Yeah.
related as well. How we behave, how we respond to each other's needs. That is, you're going for the meaning of convention there, isn't it? What is the society's convention? Society is developing the ideas together instead of getting influence from revelation. So that is
Yeah.
mentioned at the end. Any other comment? How would you convey this to others? Like what you learned from this paragraph?
I would say that study of nature is limited to, the methods are limited to us because we are the ones who are developing the sciences anyway. So the experiential of understanding that knowledge, if it's only up to the man himself, is only limited to whatever man limitation. I think that would be, I would say it will be a recursive thing. So it's quite restricting if you think in a big picture. So that's what I understand of this paragraph. Haven't can read the next paragraph.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. We have to keep in mind when we're reading Prof. Alatas's work that his idea develops from the very beginning of his youth, the time when he was doing his masters in McGill and different experience in ISTAC. He was in UKM and he was trying to introduce the Malay language as the medium of instruction in universities. This all kinds of things that was happening in the world of science at those times were not necessarily the same as what we have today. Like today we have theoretical physics. It wasn't as well known by the public in those days. So some of the things may be related to that. So when we started reading from the paragraph before, which we have discussed, how contemporary science has evolved. So this is because the worldview of science is the worldview of change. So this is as opposed to the worldview of the Islamic tradition, which is not opposed to change, but at the same time, there is a permanent aspect because we are rooted to revelation from God. So it is a very not standard, but it is the same throughout our human history, but we are accepting of change and how we can influence the things that is developed by humanity. But science is relying only upon the human minds, and the human mind develop ideas. So it has made science authoritative and considered science as the most reliable source of knowledge, which is for us Al-Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And not only that, also we benefit from our scholars who are the heirs of the Prophet. So they explain to us and they make it as we develop new new knowledge and technology and whatever influences in our life, they put it in perspective for us. So they are also an important corpus of knowledge for Muslims. But for the non-Muslim world, especially when we talk about modernity, we're referring to the West, then the worldview of change means you want change. You don't want something to stay as it is. If something is already confirmed as truth, you want to change that. You believe that there's something better. because we human always shows ourselves that we can come up with better and better way of thinking and living. So we expect that. That's the worldview that we're living in our modern world. So this is why Prof. Alatas is talking about these influences from the Western worldview, which dominates philosophy or way of thinking and gaining knowledge, which later on become reduced from philosophy or knowledge referring to all knowledge, including the realization about the creator, or maybe mathematics, or maybe about ourselves, but it become reduced to just this physical aspect, which we call science, which is modern science. And throughout some period in the not in the 19th, since the 16th century, the only way to confirm something is through our sensory perceptions. So that is the empiricism. So up here, this the mention of philosophic empiricism and logical empiricism, which bases all knowledge on observable facts, logical constructions, and linguistic analysis. So this is the main difference that we must be aware of. How science at its highest point with Newton and all that is very empirical. So it's, if you don't observe something, then you don't have any evidence. But also at the same time, the rationalism is also referring to the way you think. So how you prove something is also through mathematics. So there's also this logical constructions, which in the beginning, they are not so focused on numbers and plugging in numbers into formula, but it's more as a statement that was introduced by Aristotle, logic, and improved by Ibn Sina. So this logic helps us in the knowledge that we gain through our sensory perceptions, how we prove that it's true. Because maybe it's just you that you witness something. In Islamic philosophy, there's the idea of sound senses. What you depend on for knowledge, sources of knowledge are sound senses instead of just your sensory perception. It has to be sound. You have to be someone who really can see, not like me with my glasses right now. I'm not having a sound sense of sight at the moment. And actually, truthfully, I was trying to pursue a degree in biology when I was younger, doing my bachelor's. So I got into Columbia University, and I was supposed to do biology, but I didn't realize that each university has like their own specialty, and it changes rapidly in the universities in the West. So they are because they are at the edge of research, so they're just not reading like same textbooks, the same material. So it was already the one that I registered myself for. There was microcellular biology, and I didn't know that's what I was getting into. I mean, I just chose whatever universities, applied to several universities when I got there. So I had to really peer through the microscope a lot. And for some reason, the light was always reflecting on my glasses, and I really couldn't see. I don't know what I was looking at. So to cut the story short, I did not have sound senses even then with my eyesight. And so I left biology, and I had to do something economic, something with numbers, because Malaysian government was the one that sent us to study. So so the government says, oh, do you want to do political science? No, you have to do something with numbers. So economics it was. So it's just goes to show that your senses has to be sound too. So and once you see something, like if I see something in that microscope, then I have to give evidence from what I conclude from that observation. So that's where logical constructions come. And linguistic analysis is how we devise our language to reflect this. And it's supposed to reflect the truth. Our language is supposed to reflect the truth. Even in Surah Al-Baqarah, there is, how the creation of the first man, Prophet Adam, and how Allah says in Jannah, Prophet Adam was shown everything, and then he was taught the name of everything. So so in that sense, everything has a name already. Allah is, of course, aware of every creations, even the creation that he does not make to be manifested and it exists in his mind. There are creations that for us is an unknown or non-existent, but in Allah's mind, it is a creation. And he would only say kun fayakun, be, and it is, then it would manifest itself and would be a known, possibly a known object to us if he wants us to have contact with it. So that's our idea of language. And so the Quran is in the Arabic, and so this language is language that is part of revelations from Allah, from the creator. So it's different from a language that human develops. But what we see today is that this language is also has the influence of humans developing it, changing certain things. And these are all convention. We're talking about society's convention. So it impacts the way we think, it impacts the language that we express our thought in. So it becomes artificial because we are not the creator. So we are the one who decide, and who decide among us, the elites, of course. So as I went back here, so you can see these three important things: the observable facts, logical constructions, linguistic analysis, and then rationalism in the next paragraph. This is our using our mind to observe the reality, or meaning the physical world. And this is an okay method. But then because our idea of reason is just limited to our brain cells coming up with an understanding of something, it's very in an outer dimension where zahir, where we just, it's empirical, where we just see what we see, and we tally it with numbers, we confirm it exists. If we see blue, we say it's blue, it's green. But our akal or intellect is not just limited to those very obvious facts about things. We have intuition here, which is the next paragraph, where it's something that's given by Allah. And many of the modern scientists, Western scientists, also partake in this intuition. So they have a lot of history in science where, Einstein had an intuition, the Watson and Crick model of the DNA came out of a dream. So this is something they don't deny, but this is here, if you read on your own, is their definition, because they don't accept God. That knowledge is something that, a bestowal, a gift from God. And our soul is involved in it, in reaching out. We work hard to understand knowledge, but we don't receive it until Allah has made it something we can reach. Then that's the husul and the wusul in the concept of education, another book by Prophet Atas, and Islam and Secularism, I believe. There's a more definition about those things. Any question or comments? No? Okay, so for the next paragraph, that Sister Atika just read. So when we do science, modern science, we don't consider ourselves as part of the research until recently. So to be objective is to just look at the object of research and to not have any relationship with it. But Pravatas is stating here something that we are more aware of now. If you're aware of the a research method called phenomenology in the West, it's also something that would put the subject as part of that research. So a lot of things has improved in that sense, but it needs to be grounded to revelation of Islam, which is Quran. But when we share this with non-Muslims, for instance, we can at least convince them how revelation can play a role by showing how it is in Islam. So the study of man, of mind, and of the self is restricted to the method of new sciences such as psychology, biology, and anthropology, which consider the definition of man itself as not having this kind of soul and intellect influencing it. It's more like the, part of the animal species going through evolution, which they has taken as the major creed of the worldview of science. So to verify hypotheses and theories of science, everything has to correspond. So the empirical part, what you observe, and then you have to come up with proof to make it a fact. So they produce something like you produce a product in a factory. When you think in this way, scientists go into a lab and they have a hypothesis, and this is the product that they need to verify. So this is written by Bruno Latour, Bruno. I am not good at going to the screen here, so here, chat. So you can find a book by Bruno Latour where he discusses science as an enterprise. So he is a sociologist, therefore he researched scientists in their labs and he observed how they talk to each other, how they make sure that they get published in journals, or even how they are working for big corporations like pharmaceutical companies, and how they are paid to produce certain things. So this is not saying that all science are like this, but this is a major part of modern practice of science today. So you can see that fact, as they try to tell us, is fact means fact. Wow, it's the truth. If someone say it's a fact, but Bruno Latour and some sociologists of science, they try to argue that fact is actually a product that is manufactured in the scientific work. And so such preference is then dictated simply by subjective and arbitrary considerations dependent upon convention. So they also have their SOP. Convention is you have the what do you call it? The levels of authority. So as you know, maybe Newton and Einstein, certain Darwin, these are ultimately the most authoritative throughout the history of science. But then, of course, you have, modern scholars or scientists in big institutions in the West who are leading the latest research. And unfortunately, the scientists in the developing world, they are more like technicians. So unless we change the way we think and we free ourselves from the kind of knowledge colonization that we have, we are doing a lot of, as if we're taking a calculator and doing the calculation for someone. And we are doing this in our science lab, where we just produce a little part of a big research that's based in the West. And then we send our discovery in the journal, and in order to get our KPI at the university. So what I'm saying is that there is this collective mind of society in science, and then we also have like a larger convention in our society, which I think Atika was touching on ethics. How do we behave? What is politically correct? All of this. So it's making society the God, because there's no revelation in that society. Any comment? Okay, I'll leave it to Atika to continue. Or to ask my sisters.
Sister Nani, would you like to go?
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes, loud and clear.
So we finally, doubt is elevated as an epistemological method by means of which the rationalist and the secularist believe that truth is arrived at. But there is no proof that it is doubt and not something else other than doubt that enables one to arrive at truth. The arrival at truth is in reality the result of guidance, not of doubt. Doubt is a wavering between two opposites without preponderating over either one of them. It is a condition of being stationary in the midst of the two opposites without the heart inclining towards the one or the other. If the heart inclines more towards the one and not towards the other, it is conjecture. If the heart rejects the other, then it has entered the station of certainty.
Frozen. The heart's rejecting the other is a sign not of doubt as to its truth, but of positive recognition of its error or falsity. This is guidance. Doubt, whether it be definitive or provisional, leads either to conjecture or to another position of uncertainty, never to the truth. And conjecture avails not against truth. Sister Farah, sorry, I was reading for you. I don't know. Yeah, you're back?
Sorry, my internet is okay. Now I'm back.
Okay, I finished
Oh.
reading the paragraph.
Okay.
All right, any comments or question? I mean, what kind of question comes up when you read this? I'm curious too.
Doctor, I think I'm curious about the difference between Descartes and Imam Ghazali. When Imam Ghazali used also he asked question to reject. I mean, he's not skeptic, but he tried to find proof to actually how to say, to perish the conjecture, but Descartes used conjecture as the source of knowledge, right?
Oh, yes, very, very deep question, mashallah. Going to Islamic philosophy and Western philosophy.
That is why they come to the different conclusion. Even they use skepticism, they ask question before coming to conclusions. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will address that, inshallah. Anything else? Okay, so I'll just, before I answer that, so let me just go through what I usually explain this. So the word doubt, Prof. Alatas is referring to the Western elements. In his Islam and Secularism, Prof. Alatas wrote a lot about the West. And some people take this as saying that he's attacking the West and, he's anti-West. But actually, his main objective is to bring the West to have discussion with Muslim scholars. But of course, we don't see our Muslim scholars today as being highly prepared as the intellectuals of the past, like Imam Al-Ghazali, that Sister Ashikin mentioned. But actually, we do have the gems among us. It's just that perhaps we need to get together more. And we have such a division among us. So perhaps that's one of the things that's stopping this from coming out. But why is doubt such a characteristic element of the Western mind? It started off from the Greeks. So the West looked to the Greeks as their ancestors, the intellectual origin. So you can see that in Greek tragedies, according to Prof. Alatas. So anyone who want to study in the West usually would have to take some courses not related to their Assalamualaikum Sister Sabar. Those who study in a program that still maintain the importance of humanities. I heard in the UK you have to go straight to your field, but in the US it's still that before you can venture on to your whatever you study, you have to take certain humanities subject, and this is to build a worldly person, a well-educated person, who has a whole view of things, who have a rooted understanding. And this is actually taken from the Islamic tradition, because it is the Muslim scholars who have this polymath kind of study, where they don't just specialize in one area, but they look into everything. For the West, there's always this doubting of themselves and doubting of their existence, doubting of God, and this skepticism continued throughout the ages in different positions and different philosophical schools. So we don't have time to really go into them, but as far as doubt as a method, it was introduced by Descartes, as Sister Ashikin mentioned. So Descartes is a French philosopher of the 17th century, if I'm not mistaken. And he comes from the tradition of rationalism, where he's not focusing on experiment per se, but he does a lot of thought experiment as well. So one of them is like in the winter time, he was with this heating oven to keep his rooms caught. He was in the middle of winter, very cold, and then he put himself in the oven or something, like he sits inside, and he has like a realization about his existence, and and he was wondering if if you leave the room, is the table and the chairs going to be at the same place or not? Are they going to be like flying? And he wonders, does he really exist? So he's trying to like really doing an experiment on himself. It's not because he's like silly or I mean, the easiest way usually, I'm really against this, how people would just, to discuss how great Islamic tradition is, that you put down other traditions and you just say, these Westerners are, they're really deluded, they don't know God, so they dumb or whatever. It's not how you do have to have humbleness even with them, even with the non-Muslims. So to try to think about how they think, and you try to think about how when you wake up, if you don't have belief in God and you don't know where you came from, so these are the kind of doubting that they have, from not knowing, not being given revelation. So they have a lot of doubts each day about themselves, their existence. So is everything for real? But then he came to the conclusion that the fact that I'm thinking about this, that means I am real. I do exist. So that's why it is cogito ergo sum in Latin, or what is it in French? Je suis, je donc pense, something like that. I think therefore I am. So this is, then he used this as a method. So if you have doubt, then it can lead you to your research about yourself. But that is not true. That will surely always show you the light. So Prof. Altas is agreeing here by saying, what is it like when you are doubting? You can only get truth with guidance. So you cannot get truth because you are doubting and then rejecting. I'm reading here, doubt is a wavering between two opposites without preponderating over either one of them. So you're not inclined to any of them. You just like, I don't know, and I don't believe, you're just leaving it like that. It is a condition of being stationary in the midst of the two opposites without the heart inclining toward one or the other. If the heart inclines more toward the one and not toward the other, while yet not rejecting the other, it is conjecture. So conjecture, you just feel like, okay, I think this is right. So this one, if you have friends who are converts, you should always like ask them, because when someone become Muslims, maybe through marriage or something, they haven't really rejected their religion yet, the previous religion yet. So, they need help. So this is when some people don't even think about it, that you think you just accept something, that means you're fully in, but you're not there yet. If you still have that where you are, either you're in the middle or you're inclined to this because, you just don't know. So the heart rejecting the other, though, is a sign not of doubt as to its truth, but of positive recognition of its error or falsity. So when you start to reject something, that's why we don't accept perennial philosophy, where it says that all religions are valid, because that actually contradicts one another. If we have a trend now where other religions like this idea of perennial philosophy, to say that, oh, okay, we're all in this together, we're all doubting, but we choose one. It's not like that. It's truth is out there. So this is relativism, means there is no truth, and then we don't have to worry, don't have to think, we don't have to choose. But people who really look for truth, they have to think about this. And if one religion says that, I'm not talking about Islam. In Islam, we have our scholars protecting the religion and to say that this is the one true religion that will lead you to Jannah. But if someone who is in another religion, just happy saying, I accept, I don't know if my religion is true or not, but it's as true as your religion. So then the actual truth is, can you have that statement in logic? Can you say that this is also true and that is also true? It does not. It contradicts logically. So therefore, anyone knows it, and they just don't want to use their logical mind. Sister Ashikin, you have something to interject here? I see that you are agreeing with me.
Yeah, on the same page, doctor, because we're talking about recognizing all religion to be I mean all religion are true is actually happening now, where people want to promote inclusivity, right? I think false is a false, how to say, is a false tolerance, I think, because now in SDG, for example, they're trying to normalize uh, the idea of putting all religion at the same horizontal level. So this is very is a threat to us, actually, not to get the whole sale of SDG to that level of understanding about religion, because our religion has special narrative, and very, I think we have the all set about the discussion about religion, and other religion sometimes they have just a piece of discussion about what is religion is all about. So I think, like, for example, in the paradigm of integration of knowledge, for example, we will fall into that problem where we want to integrate, and we will put all the all worldview at the same page, right? And all view at the same level, and just for the sake of integration of knowledge to make things comprehensive, but we lack of sense of certainty in that sense, because we approve everyone is true. So this is another relativism, truly.
Yeah,
That's
this
why I can reflect what Dr. Just said just now.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss this more openly, because we are feeling apologetic because the whole world have accepted that you don't know the truth. So when you stand up as the only person saying that, but I believe my religion is the true one, people look down on you, and
Yeah.
that you are so arrogant, because they are coming from the perspective of not having revelation, the true revelation. So we have to understand that. At the same time, we don't talk about this in a demeaning way. A lot of time Muslims like to put down, other religion, and or even make fun of them, but it has to be in the language of just seeking truth. So it's not about, I'm better than you because I have the true religion. It's because I found this to be true. And if you haven't found it, I want you to know that there is such a thing, and you can find out through that. Yeah. Any other sisters want to say anything? Sister Sabra, welcome. Okay, if none, then I have to proceed to answer the question that you asked about Imam Al-Ghazali. So we have now the study of Islam is being done in the West and in the Muslim world, such as our country, Malaysia. And of course, Middle Eastern countries have always been producing, Islamic learning. In the West, the framework is different. Because they are coming from, of course, this influence that I'm mentioning here, the doubt as method and the perennial ideas of thinking that all religions are on the equal footing, equal basis of truth. So I don't think Muslim scholars who study in the West are that free to express themselves. So this is what Prof. Alata's work is about. It's for Muslims, because for him, knowledge is the key to our survival, solution to our building our civilization again. So it begins with people of knowledge. So our universities needs to carry the Islamic framework. It needs to carry that full trust and no doubt, no doubt, and any influence from the West that are tainted with such doubts. So we have to come up clean, but we are not able to, because all our universities do not start over fresh. So it's always an integration and mixing of the Western material that is tainted with doubt and not having revelation. So we are not starting over yet. So we're still having this, but Prof. Atas already prepared this framework. It's just that we don't take the time to accept it fully. So we just take some part. So about Imam Al-Ghazali, why I'm mentioning this is because some of the writings that talk about Imam Al-Ghazali and his skepticism or his doubts is coming from the Western Muslim scholars. So what happened is we are also cut off from Sufism. So Imam Al-Ghazali was in a period when he was a great lecturer in fiqh, theology. So these are more like an empirical science. When you talk about fiqh, halal and haram, it's more empirical, like what do Muslims do? This is manifested in Rukun Islam. Rukun Islam is about, okay, so I'm Muslim, so what do I do? But Rukun Iman is, what do I believe? You can be a Muslim, but you're not a mu'min yet. You can do everything, you pray, you fast, but you don't internalize, you're just doing because your mom and dad always told you, never ever skip this. And so some people decided to skip it also. But in our heart, we have full certainty. That's when we have Iman. So Imam Al-Ghazali never had that doubt. But because the word doubt, when they put to a person, a Muslim, coming from a non-Muslim perspective, that's the kind of doubt they have. Imam Al-Ghazali did not have a doubt for Allah for a second. So it's so wrong to give that thesis for people to accept in that way. But but I haven't read the book myself or the article, so maybe I'm misunderstanding it. So if the explanation is the doubt of Imam Al-Ghazali is about his soul, his own self, because he was practicing, he was at the height of his fame, and he did not like it because he knows the concept of riya, in Islam, how we do things, we seek knowledge for Allah. We don't do it to gain either fame, money, or, whatever praises. So he's starting to doubt himself and he wants to get away from it all. And so he left his prestigious position in the Nizamiya college. And he went wandering and learning Sufism more deeply. And then he came back. Then we have the Imam Al-Ghazali that we know today. So there was no doubt involved whatsoever. Yeah. So I guess we can continue.
Would you mind to read, Sister Shiki?
Sure. Based
Thank
upon
you.
the position established by our philosophical and scientific tradition as integrated into a coherent metaphysical system, we maintain that many important similarities are found between our position and that of modern contemporary philosophy and science with regard to the sources and methods of knowledge, the unity of the rational and empirical ways of knowing, the combination of realism, idealism, and pragmatism as the cognitive foundation of a philosophy of science, a philosophy and science of process. But these similarities are apparent and pertain only to their external aspects, and they do not negate the profound differences that arise from our divergent worldviews and belief about the ultimate nature of reality. Our affirmation of revelation as the source of knowledge of ultimate reality and truth, pertaining both to created things as well as to their creator, provides us with the foundation for a metaphysical framework in which to elaborate our philosophy of science as an integrated system descriptive of that reality and truth in a way which is not open to the methods of the secular philosophic rationalism and philosophic empiricism of modern philosophy and science.
Thank you, Sister Ashiki. Any comment on that? Any question? Okay, I should shut this if you want to read first. Okay.
Continue?
No. Yeah, there is.
Continue or what, Doctor?
No, I'm just letting you guys ask, important questions so we can go straight to it. But if not, then, let me look into this. So we have been talking about the Western worldview. And so Prof. Atas now is saying every word that he used, we have to be very careful about because he's very precise, so he doesn't just add something for, you know, beautiful language or something. So he says the position established by our philosophical and scientific tradition. So it's not, so philosophical is separate, scientific is separate. Perhaps philosophical is more the rationalism, the ideas, and scientific is more empirical, perhaps. I'm not sure either. But this is integrated into a coherent metaphysical system. When we mean by metaphysics, we mean Sufism. But Sufism, as we know, is more the practice of zikr, and some, you know, there are among us who, you know, are in a tariqah group who has a spiritual guide, the scholars, but this is not the one that he's referring to, even though it is, you know, the realities of Muslims on the early days were that Sufism was just what came with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just because the concept of ihsan. So you have the Islam, Iman, ihsan, and ihsan is to practice, to do your worship, as if Allah sees you, even though Allah does, even though you don't see Allah, you know Allah sees you. So to perform all worship at that maqam, at that position of awareness with deep contemplation, consciousness, mindfulness, and not for human beings or any other. So this metaphysical system, when it's taken in a theoretical sense, is about our existence itself. So the question that Descartes had about I think, therefore I am, it answers those questions. So we have our great scholars, you know, from Imam Al-Ghazali to Ibn Arabi, later day scholars, Mullah Sadra from the Shia position, they all talk about, you know, affirming this fact that we truly exist, but they talk about Tawheed at the lower level of understanding of the unity of creation with God, and at the higher level of Wahdatul Wujud, how we are in awareness that we are nothing without the existence of Allah. So Allah has the absolute existence and the one giving us existence, and our existence is relative to that existence. This is in answer to some philosophical and religious ideas like Hinduism that believe pantheism, where everything has God in it, you know, or monism, where it's like believing in spirit, when you believe that, you know, spirit dwells in every object. That is, at the same time, there's also the belief that because our existence is not actually real, because it's dependent on something, right, on Allah, then there are the belief that we actually don't exist. So that's an extreme form. To extreme form in Hinduism, that's the concept of Maya, where then it's just our life here is just like a stage, a play. So it's not real. And idealism also has some aspect of rejecting the reality. So for us, we are in the middle. So it's not really real because it's dependent on Allah. Yeah. So this is the metaphysical system. So our ideas about, you know, the methods of seeking knowledge, particularly science here, is based on that. And there are similarities, so scientists don't have to worry. Muslim scientists don't have to worry here, as with regard to the sources, the methods, you know, using deduction, induction, those experimental things in the lab, and mathematics is not against Islam and the unity of the rational and empirical ways of knowing, and combining between idealism, and pragmatism. If anyone needs more explanation of this, we can try to do another time. You can just ask. But realism is coming from the idea of Aristotle, and idealism is the idea of Plato. And Aristotle was rejecting his teacher's idea. But pragmatism in our time sees the necessity of both idealism and realism in the practice of science. So it allows for the combining of those. So this is the cognitive foundation of philosophy of science. And then the philosophy of process, of phenomena, is something that is of a coming into being. Something is happening all the time. For instance, from the very beginning, the Greek scientists say, when you put your foot in the river, it's never the same water, right? You think water is flowing, what a nice view. It's, this water, that water, but that water is not the same water it was second ago. The process is always happening. So in a Muslim belief that Allah is always creating, and every instance we are not the same person we were like a second, but second is very, worldly word, but whatever Allah deems it, that time frame, it's never the same. It's always Allah is recreating. Allah is always doing and never resting. So this is part of that philosophy of process. As I understand it, I might be, I'm still, if you have any other, from our teachers or whoever, philosophers that talk about this, or theologians, please share with me. So the similarities are apparent and pertain only to the external aspects, and they don't negate the profound differences. So of course, we have talked about the differences being the revelation as the source of knowledge of ultimate reality and truth. And so with this revelation as the source of our knowledge, we can use all of those methods and sources that has been done by science to elaborate our philosophy of science as an integrated system to describe reality and truth. Reality and truth does not like the secular philosophic rationalism and empiricism, because it's based on the belief in God. So any comment?
The doctor said about we are in the state of recreation. So the natijah or the wisdom behind it is that we need to be grateful that Allah lent us life, right? For every dot of our recreational point. And I think I recall it what Prof. Zaini said about Khalqun Jadid. Is it the concept, right?
Yes,
Khalqun Jadid
means new creation every time.
Yeah, is existent in two separate times, isn't it? I don't know. Khalqun Jadid.
So yeah, it's a continuous, discrete. So this now is being addressed by theoretical physics. So this, this the discreteness of the atoms and all these things that they go into, which can prove what Islam has been talking about, especially theoretical Sufism. So because these things, the question on existence and Allah's creation, this is topic of kalam in our tradition, kalam, and also the Sufism at the higher level. Right, Sister Sabra. Yeah, so you mentioned that everything's on loan from Allah. That one I had done a reading of Risalah untuk kaum Muslimin during Ramadan. So if you're interested, I will have the videos of a similar forum like this. And I'm always, if you want to have more, we can do that. But also this monograph, Islam, the concept of religion and the foundation of ethics and morality, Prof. Alatas talked about the word deen, that it comes from Dalia Nun, and can be dine also, which is loan, to put it in the worldly perspective, that we are in a business deal with Allah, whereby He gives us our soul and He asks us only to worship Him, and then we will be back to our original home in Jannah, where Prophet Adam came from. So that's how Muslims, are grateful to Allah, and why we do all this, because we have to understand also from the non-Muslim perspective, when you don't know this, then why do Muslims, trouble themselves so much? And why do you expect other Muslims to do it? Why do you want your children to be living this hard, difficult life? We have to try to understand and bring our society to understand. We don't want to force them to become Muslims, but we have a duty to see their perspectives and for them to try to understand our perspective. But first, we have to try to understand what they are not understanding about the Islamic way of life. Okay, to end with the last paragraph, I will read this. In contrast to modern philosophy and science, with regard to the sources and methods of knowledge, we maintain that knowledge comes from God and is acquired through the channels of the sound senses, through report based on authority, sound reason, and intuition. So this is very important. The main things to separate us, if you are scientists, if you are teachers, and you are teaching your children, grandchildren, and they are learning science. So this is all that you can tell them, very easy. So science have their methods, and we not necessarily opposed to their methods, but our method is based on the channels using sound senses, which is basic. This is like assuming that the human is a normal person, not a genius. Okay, from the level going upward. So if you have sound senses, you can learn about your surrounding, can learn about yourself, can learn about the signs that God leave behind. Not leave behind, sorry, that's a bad word. That God manifests for us. God is always around, of course. True report, meaning the true report has to be based on authority, has to be validated, confirmed, which is the Quran, the Hadith, and the Prophet, even the scholars' inheritance, what they left behind. That's the right way to say they left behind, what our scholars left behind. And even the scientists have their theory that they develop, and we use that to develop more theories or to abolish some of the wrong ones. And then you use your sound reason, which is of course different from person to person, because we are not all given the same level of understanding. That's why some of us today, we specialize because we feel good. Hey, I'm good in this, so don't bother me with the other things, or, like me, I used to love English a lot because I've been exposed to it since little. So I just wanted to do that, right? Because you feel confident and happy. But if you are tested with something that you're not good at, like mathematics for me, then I'm not so happy because I'm not feeling, the freedom of knowing everything. So sound reason is different from person to person. Sorry, I'm trying to close this. And intuition is something that Allah bestow on us. So for Muslims, we have the method of building our intuition, not for the sake of having such intuition, but through Sufism, for instance, there is a method of purifying our soul, and by purifying our soul, we are more receptive to what Allah wants to give us. You can say that in the Quran, there's the idea of um, uh, on our heart, means it gets black with every sin that we commit. And then when we do zikr, when we do ibadah, whatever good deeds we do for the sake of Allah, it gets clean and purified. The heart then becomes like a mirror that Allah can gives guidance, light of guidance to our heart, and it will reflect back. It will absorb in a way, as opposed to when our heart is dirty. So we have to keep purifying our heart through all these things that people who don't follow Sufism also can do. But we actually have an intellectual tradition in Sufism where we have, great scholars, Hassan al-Basri, and the teachers of Imam al-Ghazali. They all from the Middle East all the way to, the Malay Islands, the Malay archipelago. We have specific great scholars in that field. So they wrote about it. So they prescribe it already. So we already have it. And we can you can go up the levels, because it's not something just, it's very dynamic. So with that, we transform our being and our receptivity to knowledge, and Allah would give us, we'll have intuition that we can depend on. But we have to be careful, because sometimes these things are whisperings, and it's not necessarily from the source that's pure that we imagine, but it could be from shaitan also. So of course, this is the difference. Guys, have anything to say?
So, yes, I do have something to say. When it comes to sound senses, of course, mine is also impaired, and also, especially as we age, can our senses are compromised. So, in that sense, I appreciate what you said. Sufism is also a way to go. That means, we've heard people who with disabilities can they cannot see, they cannot hear. For example, Helen Keller can, but they can still learn, and they use intuition. It's somehow they develop sixth sense. Who knows? But we're not just limited to our senses, and that's actually a good news.
True.
Can even as you age, as is, you know, when you come to your, you've age so much, even at 80 years old, there's still that we can still like put in a lot of effort to sort of learn, and that will be counted towards something. Um, and yeah, I think Sufism and using other beyond your senses is something that we probably don't appreciate enough.
It's something that is really the core of our religion, which is knowledge. So definitely we are till the end of our breath, we would still be learning something. And we use these things, learning something straight from Allah, directly from Allah. Is intuition is just a general one. We can penetrate deeper to several levels of this kind of bestowal from Allah. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, we're not always open to the idea of learning about tasawwuf or tazkiyatun nafs, and we have major disagreement that we shun each other and we label each other. So that is a big problem. Yeah. I just want to see if anyone has any comment. I think I'm getting above the time now.
Yeah, Sister Shija atau Sister Nani, Sister Saban, ada apa-apa soalan?
Maybe one comment is on these are the common sense, the representation, the estimation, the retention and recollection, and imagination. And then he kind of detailed on a bit on perception. Where is this coming from? The explanation on perception is a form of the external object, i.e. representation of external reality and not the reality itself. Is it coming from a response to something or response to the norm that is wrong?
In response to the norm, you said?
Or some conclusion that he does not agree with.
Your question just now, it was noisy.
Jack, I took you put. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just the last question. It was.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's down here, right? I'm showing you, right? In the act of perception, the perceiver perceives the form. You've already went down there, right?
Okay, can you repeat what you said?
You were referring to the bottom of the paragraphs here that I didn't go to yet.
Yes.
I'll go to it quickly.
Yeah.
So the meaning underlying the expression sound senses points to the perception and observation, and these comprise the 5 external senses of touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing, which perform the function of perception of particulars in the external world. He's using philosophic language here with the word particular, means every object. So we use our senses to grasp on the characteristic of everything, the properties of an apple is red. So every single apple, this apple, that Washington apple, Japanese apple, that, and then more particular, my apple number 1, my apple number 2, apple number 3, those are particulars. But you contrast that to the idea of universal apple, is the apple that appear in your eyes. When you see problem today with ontology, is like the language. When you type in Google, apple, what comes up? iPhone, iPad, and the Apple products. So this is how the society's convention has changed language. So, but most important we're supposed to have is the universal apple, is that fruit, the fruit that Allah has intended for us to have, that tastes like that and all and everything. So that's the two philosophical words being used, particular and universal. Corresponding to these are 5 internal senses which perceive internally the sensual images and their meanings. Okay, this 5 internal senses is not part of modern science in psychology or anything, but Ibn Sina took on the ideas from Plato and Aristotle. The fact that what processes go through when you see an object, you see the apple, that's a physical, then it enters your eyes and make an image at, in your on your retina, right? And that is delivered to your brain for interpretation. But in between those, it has been discussed already in what Prof. Alatas called faculty psychology. So there are 5 internal senses that involves that delivery, where you you grasp the meaning of that object. So when you see an object, it doesn't matter that it's red. Red is just one of the essences that are not important. The meaning is more important, like what does it taste like to you? What is it for? Where is its place in comparison to other things in the world? For instance, I myself not that clear yet. That's why I'm giving you so many. But what is the meaning of an object? What does the important essence of it, as opposed to all the properties of a pen, which is cylinder, black, can write. And the next one here, it says to combine or separate them, means if you have the apple that is in front of you that you want to eat right now, then you are reminded of the other apples that you have seen. Maybe you saw jambu batu and you thought that was apple. Okay, so that will be also in your mind. So you combine them, you had apple, orange, grape, then you say, oh, grapes, no, not same as apple. You do all this in your mind. And then there's the, you combine, you separate them, then you classify. This is what scientists do, but we all do it inside our soul, in our intellect. We combine and separate, then we conceive notions of them. So we make judgment about them. We form a judgment about this object or this person, and we preserve and the conceptions thus conceived. Okay, so this is the next level. After you have classify and decided, you make judgment, then you keep that in your soul, or your mind and soul together. And you perform intellection of them, so you're not done, because some people, this is where it ends. They don't like to think. They got it, they see it, it's over. But for maybe perhaps scientists or people who likes to think, then intellection is, they always thinking about what else about that thing. So that thing is no longer in front of you, but it's there. So these are the name for them are, these are the common sense, the first one. The second, the representation, the estimation, the retention and recollection. And finally, the imagination. That one can travel in outer realms and can travel during dreams. I hope you can hear me with this noise. I'm just trying to get to Sister Farah's question at the bottom there. In the act of perception, when you're viewing something or touching something, the perceiver perceives the form of the external object that is a representation of the external reality and not the reality itself. That's what I was saying. When you see the apple, you don't, if you are given intellect, I mean, we all given intellect, I'm sorry. The truth about that thing is not that it's red or it's green. That is just the external part, external reality. But what is it about that thing? Maybe it's the taste of apple. But even deeper than that, for everything, Prof. Altas talked about this in his other books that discuss higher Sufism. like Hamza Pansuri, the mysticism of Hamza Pansuri and all that, the higher meaning is, the deeper meaning is that it exists. Existence is at the core of everything. I'm not so confident to say that is the form of every object or anything, 'cause I'm still learning as well. So what is perceived by the senses is then not the external reality as it is in itself, but it's just a representation as represented in the senses. And people who learn science can like when you see an image and it appears in your eye, it's upside down, isn't it? It's what we learn in science is supposed to the object appears in our eyes upside down, but our mind, our intellect transforms it already, so we see a cup upright. We don't see it upside down because it's our mind that's doing that. Our soul is involved in the process. It's not a very material kind of. That's what happened in science today. That's it's very just focusing on matter, focusing on material, but it's actually the soul is involved. Um, the external reality is that from which the senses abstract its form. So when you see a red apple, uh, the form of the apple is that deeper meaning, and your senses can somehow take that for your understanding. So this we'll repeat this inshallah because it's very very philosophical, and this is not easy to explain also. So yeah, you guys, if you are late, anyone, please feel free, you can leave. But I'm willing to entertain more questions.
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's regarding to to the sources of knowledge. Is senses, khabar sadiq, and intuition comes in degrees as well? Means like previously I tried to ask one of my friend who learned kalam, and they kind of reject the idea of the sources of knowledge having degrees in itself. So
What are the
because for me, existence also in degrees. It has, I mean, all the existence has martabat, right? So why we cannot assume that sources of knowledge also come in degrees?
I haven't really given much thought about that. Only that when you talk about sound senses, then there are
Lower, for the physical
it's a
things.
spectrum. Yeah, like autistic people, amazingly, they
Mm-hmm.
have their own spectrum, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a given, but I'm not, and I won't say that it's definitive. Yeah.
Because even in research, we will employ the suitable method to this to the certain to a certain subject matter of research. For example, to study human, we cannot rely on instrument itself, right? To measure using the inventory to understand human per se. We have to also listen to how to say, we have to do qualitative also to actually triangulate what we have, right? So that our finding can be more how to say, can be more authoritative instead of using instrument. So means like every subject matter has its own truth about its existence. So we have to employ the right method to study about that, right? So I think so every method is meant for certain subject matter of knowledge. So certain subject matter of existence that we study on.
Well, what you're saying about we are subjective, that's something that philosophy of science has tried to overcome, because they consider that a problem, because everyone is they they may have the superstition involved in viewing an experiment, for instance. So they don't trust humans, so that is why logical what do you call it?
Positivism.
Logical positivism depends on mathematics and the symbols, and later on even the language of science is made to conform to that style of formal logic.
Mhm.
other words, they try to make the human observers not so human in order to speak the same scientific language.
Mm.
That's a long discussion. We can pursue that more in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Okay, so Sister Farah will need to go at 11:30. Thank you, Ustazah, and thank you, Sister Ashikin, for your insights and
Thank
for
you.
asking really deep fundamental questions, picking out Ustazah Kalima's brain and ours, of course.
Yeah, it's been a
Uh,
fun discussion. So many contribution from all of you, and also
yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
yeah, thank you, Sister Sabar. So much sabar and determination. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate your attendance and also your sharing. Inshallah, Ustazah would have something going on next week, right, Ustazah? Next week,
Is
is that a
right?
day? for us?
I cannot make it in the coming one, right?
Hmm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Put out the dates. We'll put out the dates.
Okay. Yes. Please do we'll keep everyone posted in the WhatsApp group, and from there we'll see how we can manage in the next session in case Ustazah or I are not available. Okay.
Atika,
Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, Ustazah.
I think that it's not